There we go. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being at the session called Fixing the Mistakes We All, yes all, make as developers, teams, and leaders. I'm Jordana Fung. I love helping people, so reach out to me if you think I can help you with anything. But you do need to reach out to me. I am on Drupal, I'm on Twitter, all of that good stuff. I'm also part of the Drupal Community Working Group. And for those of you that don't know, the mission of the Community Working Group is to foster a friendly and welcoming community for the Drupal project and to uphold the Drupal Code of Conduct. I am always in the process of trying to be a better person and a better communicator. So if you have any tips or tricks, please let me know. I'm open for that feedback. I am from a small-ish country in South America called Suriname, where we speak Dutch. So every now and then, I might be struggling for words because I am having the Dutch word in my mind. So that can happen, but we'll get through it. So before we start, I wanted to have a few agreements. I will be, and hope you will be as well, working and speaking from a place of kindness and understanding. This is a judgment-free zone, so we won't be shaming or blaming anybody. And whenever you feel like there's something that can be done, start with yourself, right? Start with working on yourself instead of blaming or pointing fingers. So to do these kind of things, we need to be honest with ourselves. And everyone is welcome, but not every behavior is. So we do have a code of conduct here, and let's try to stick to that. So, let's start off with questions. Who here is human? Yay! Almost everybody raised their hands. This is concerning. Who here has ever made a mistake? Yes, because we are human. Making mistakes is a very human thing. We are fallible. That's how we are built. So let's take a look at what makes us do these things. The brain. The brain is an amazing thing. Think about the fact that you know where your hands and your legs are right now. That's your brain talking to your body without you knowing it, using this thing called proprioception. And that's where it knows where your brain knows where your hands and feet and your legs are at any time and what they're doing and what they should be doing. So the brain tends to do a lot of things for us. So it automates and does a lot of things, unconscious processing for us. So it automates a lot of tasks for us, like things like that we have to learn first, like driving, making coffee, walking. After a while, it's all unconscious, and it automates it for us. And this is great because if you think about it, if you had to think about every single step you needed to make consciously, it would take an enormous amount of effort. You'd be tired within an hour. So the pros to this is, all of this unconscious effort is, we have a lot of spare processing power to focus on the things we want to focus on. So it turns certain behaviors into habits. It's an amazing pro. It's also an amazing con, because it turns behaviors into habits that we don't want sometimes to become habits. So your brain is on autopilot a lot more than you think. Our brains trick us by hiding information from us. Because it needs to. So for example, when you look from left to right, your eyes move in things called saccades. These are these little jerky movements. But when you do it, your brain makes it seem smooth and effortless. You don't see those jerky movements. And that's your brain just basically skipping, like removing those little jerky movements from you. These things are called heuristics. They're mental shortcuts that allow people to solve problems and make judgments quickly, to help you focus and actually get things done. So rather than focusing on every tiny detail in the world around us, we tend to concentrate on the things that are most important to us. But this does have some effects. So I'm going to show you, we're going to try a little exercise. And it's called the awareness test. And let's try to do this. You may have
How many passes does the team in white make?
So count the passes that go to the basketball, so the team in white.
The answer is 13.
Did any of you get it?
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Did you see the moonwalking bear?
No!
Do you see it now? So this is called inattentional blindness, right? So it's also called change blindness. And this is just an amazing thing our brain does, where it hides information from us. And see if you can see the difference between the two images. So you won't always see the difference until it's pointed out to you. So when your attention is focused, even if you focus on the center of the screen, you'll see the change after it's pointed out. But before, you might not. So after it's been pointed out, changes leap out at us. It's pretty amazing. Like, okay, let's continue it, just to see how crazy it is. I didn't press the button. Do you see a change? And then it's pointed out to you. It leaps out at you almost, even when you're not even paying attention to that specific part. And this one, I didn't see at all. Do you see a difference? Who sees a difference? So it's a background behind him that changes. And that's that you're focusing on the center. They're asking you to look at the center, and you didn't see it until it was pointed out to you. So pretty amazing stuff our brain does, but also how our brain tricks us. And a way it tricks us also is to create biases. So why is this important? Because being aware that how our brains work and trick us, we understand that we all have biases. And we are more aware of our biases, we are better able to handle them, and we can make mistakes less and handle those mistakes better. And I feel like we should be celebrating mistakes. Mistakes mean we are learning and growing. It's how we handle the mistakes that matter, as long as we take responsibility for them and learn from them. One of the biggest mistakes we make is not doing enough work to create safe spaces for people. When people don't feel safe, you don't innovate and grow. So we should make more of an effort to make safe spaces for people where they can speak up and speak out, and where it's okay for them to make mistakes, but keep accountability a factor. So when we assume that everybody shares our same values and ethics and principles, it's usually when things go wrong. So it's always best to have a safe space by having explicit, clearly stated values and rules, and that way you make it safer for everyone. And we are getting better at not tolerating certain behaviors. We have declared the end of the rockstar developer, luckily. It's not okay. We're making people accountable for their actions now, which is a great thing in making people feel safe. Because a lot of people left the Linux project because of Linus Torvalds. So when you don't have safe spaces, you'll have a lot of places, a lot of times when people have unmet needs. And they'll lead to negative conflict, where they don't feel heard, they don't feel they're valued, they don't feel they're represented, and they feel hurt. And the consequences of this is you'll have a decline in contributor morale, decline in productivity, you won't be growing, you won't be changing anything, and people will be leaving the project, and they might not join. And now how we're working remotely. A recent study says that more than 3/4 of an employee's day is spent communicating with colleagues. The time for connection is much, much more important now. So, what is it when I say connection? Brené Brown says it perfectly. She says she defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. And if you compare this, seen, heard, and valued, right, with those unmet needs, it's in direct correlation to what needs to be happening. So to create safe spaces, we need to be able to be and work with the vulnerability. We need to be vulnerable. So if leaders really want people to show up, speak out, take chances, and innovate, we have to create cultures where people feel safe, where their belonging is not threatened, by speaking out, and they are supported when they make the decision to brave the wilderness and stand alone and speak the truth to BS while maintaining civility. Basically, vulnerability is, it's uncertainty, it's risk, it's exposure, it's putting yourself out there, warts and all. It's about making mistakes, it's about innovating. So if you want to grow, you're going to have to be vulnerable. You're going to have to put yourself out there. And when we create safe spaces, you make it more easy for people to do that. So another thing we can definitely be working on is communicating better. That just means expressing yourself, your goals, and your needs clearly and effectively. Because if you don't know what you want and you don't know what to say, how do you expect people to understand it? I love this quote. It says, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taking place. Where you're communicating with somebody and you think you understand each other, only to find out that that wasn't the case at all. And effective communication is about clearly stating definitions. It's about your message or what your words objectively mean. It's not about that, but it's rather about how people understand those words. It's essential to consider your audience's preconceptions, especially their beliefs and their fears. We talked about biases. We all have them. We all have language barriers. We have different cultures. So one word can mean something completely different and have a completely different effect on me than it does to you. So have clearly defined goals and expectations. We have another bias called the curse of knowledge, or cognitive bias. It's when I know something, I can't unknow it. I don't remember what it's like not to know that information. So it's harder for me to communicate with others and individuals that don't have that information, because I almost assume they have it. So we have a tendency to obscure language then. We don't explain jargon, and we don't spell out the logic behind our thoughts and actions. So it's really important to choose your words wisely. Try to communicate as simply as you can. It's nice to use expensive words, but when it gets in the way of your message, it's not effective communication. So basically, I threw this in a thesaurus, and what it basically says is, there are a lot of words you can use. Choose the most simple ones that make your message clear. Or you could say it that way. So let's define some of the things that I think is important for us as developers. Teamwork. Teamwork is working towards a common goal where the group shares a set of norms and values, and everyone shares in the knowledge, ideas, and responsibilities of that group. And leadership is, and again, Brené Brown, a great definition, is a leader is someone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. So the best way to lead and to work in a team is something we tend to do horribly, and that's the listening. We can listen better. So most people who listen don't listen with the intent to understand. They're waiting for their turn to speak. They listen with the intent to reply. So Stephen Covey says it amazingly. If I were to summarize in one sentence the single most important principle I have learned in the field of interpersonal relationships, it would be this: seek first to understand, then be understood. You already know all of your knowledge that you have in your head. You already have your framework, you already have your culture, you already have your set of expectations. But by giving yourself a chance to listen and actually understand the person that you're talking to, could give you more insight. And how I try to do it when I am conversing with somebody, and especially if it's about something I'm passionate about, I try to treat it as an interview. Because when I'm interviewing this person, I'm listening. I'm actively listening to what they have to say. I'm not just waiting for my turn to speak. So, Clive, we can do a little exercise. If you like, I could read it with you. Shannon is the head of a small consulting firm, and she's agonizing about whether to fire Clive, her IT director. Over the past year, Clive has consistently failed to do more than the minimum required of him. He's not without his talents. He's intelligent and has a knack of improvising cheap solutions to technical problems. But he rarely takes any initiative. Worse, his attitude is poor. In meetings, he is often critical of other people's ideas, sometimes caustically so. Unfortunately, losing Clive would cause problems in the short term. He understands how to maintain the company's database of clients better than anyone else. What would you advise her to do? Should she fire him or not? Who would fire Clive?
You fired him in Florida.
You fired him in Florida. And who would do something else? Okay, what would you do?
I think that based on the information given, at least, like, it would depend on how far this issue had been addressed so far. So I'm thinking back to, I work at the Y and we do this training on intro to leading others, and they talk about you do the informal coaching, the formal discipline, and then you moved to reprimanding and firing somebody. So I don't assume based on this that I actually understand what the source of the problem. I see the symptoms, I don't actually see the source, even though it's easy to look at that and say, well Clive's just a pain in the butt.
This is perfect because you're not assuming anything. You're kind of thinking of what could be the options, but we have a tendency to assume a lot with a little bit of information. And thank you. You pass it kind of like flying colors with this thing, because you can't. This is the whole point of this. We have the tendency, and this is a brain shortcut again, to make assumptions and conclusions based on very little information. Daniel Kahneman says, he says that we are quick to jump into conclusions because we give too much weight to the information that's right in front of us, while failing to consider the information that's just off stage, right? We don't know everything. We only know what Shannon just told us, and there might be a lot more that's at play, right? Maybe Shannon's not great. Maybe Clive could do well with some, like you said, coaching. So he refers to this as the spotlight effect. It's where you can only see the thing that's in the spotlight and you kind of ignore everything else around it. And this is a very big bias we tend to have. And being aware of it, like you say, by training, that kind of stuff, you get better at it, at spotting it and stopping yourself from doing it.
Yes. Can I clarify something?
Yes.
That they don't know? I only fired Clive to make enough people brave enough to put their hands up.
Okay, you're doing it to make a safe space, is what you're saying. You fired somebody to create a safe space.
Exactly, that's
Okay.
what you didn't know.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing it. So how do we become more aware of our biases and of these things that we do? We should use critical awareness, and that means just questioning ourselves. What is the situation actually, and what is your perception of it? So it's questioning your evaluations and challenging your assumptions. Like, When something happens and it's not going well, somebody's being mean to you, it probably has nothing to do with you. That person might be having an amazingly awful day. That person might be all in their head because something awful happened. Everyone has their own life, their own purpose, and their own reality. It's not about you most of the time. So, when you're dealing with others, it's best to try not to presume malice. If you don't presume malice, stupidity, or ignorance, it makes you such a much better communicator, colleague, partner, and basically person in general. And we could do that by using a little thing called empathy. The empathy is the ability to understand what another person is thinking or feeling. It's basically being able to place yourself in another person's shoes. So when we are more empathetic to other people, we'll start to realize the fact that they are living their own lives and that they do have other things going on besides the thing we're focusing on right now. We tend, as developers as well, to focus much more on the intent of our actions than the impact. I didn't intend to offend anybody is something we hear a lot. I didn't intend to make anybody feel bad, right? And that's great. You can have great intentions, but the impact of your words and actions can be completely different. And this is about, again, awareness. It's about reading the room, knowing your audience. A joke that can work well in a bar might not work well in the boardroom. So it's best to err on the side of caution. Go for the more appropriate option. Is it that important for you to make that sexist joke? You know, is it going to make your point that much better? Probably not. There's probably a better way of doing it. So it's about how we say things. Sometimes it's one sentence can have a completely different meaning by the way we say things, by nonverbal cues. Are we speaking in an aggressive tone? Are we frowning? Are we smiling? Our tone, our pitch, our emphasis. So if I ask, what are you doing? It's completely different than, what are you doing? The emphasis, the impact of my words can change very easily about how I say it. Equally important is when you say it. Is somebody very pissed off right now? Can you maybe give it some time to calm down? Is it better to call in versus calling out? Do you need to call them out in front of everybody, or can you just bring them aside and speak to them more kindly? Because a lot of the times, people aren't aware that they might be stepping out of line. And we all have triggers. So sometimes we're triggered by certain things, and we have a tendency to want to act right away. Always try to take a step back and calm down. Think about your actions before doing them. And when we have a tendency to speak with a lot of judgment. So we speak with a lot of judgment and evaluation instead of speaking about facts. So when you have to have criticism and difficult conversations, it's best to try to be as non-judgmental as possible, which is extremely hard because our language kind of works against us with this. So it's about making observations without evaluations. For example, it's about sticking to the facts. For example, you're sharing a room with somebody and their stuff is everywhere. And it's on your nerves. A judgmental way of saying it is, can you clean your messy room? Because you're adding judgment in with the word messy. You're calling it a messy room, so you're calling me messy. Compared to, hey, there's a lot of stuff everywhere. Can we clean it so it, and then explain why? For my mental well-being, it will help me if we can just have a little of these things sorted. And this is one of the tenets of something called nonviolent communication, which is a pretty awesome and interesting thing to do. It is a pretty all-encompassing thing, so like with every other thing, you can take what you need and what you think is helpful. So when we combine observation with evaluation, we decrease the likelihood that others will hear our intended message. Instead, they are apt to hear criticism and thus resist what we are saying. So when you do have to talk to somebody about when something went wrong or to give them criticism, when something went wrong, ask, were the intentions clear? Were the goals clear? The expectations that they needed to meet? And for this, you need to ask the right questions. Don't just ask, did it go well? Ask, what did they struggle with? Ask specific questions to get the right answers. And we have a tendency to just focus on the things that went wrong, but also we should also be focusing on the things that went right. We were working under pressure, but we kept our cool, right? When you celebrate small wins, you show gratitude and appreciation, and you empower people, and you create safe spaces by letting people know it's okay to make mistakes, because this happens. And when you're talking to somebody, it's always helpful to start with, is what I'm about to say true? Is what I'm about to say helpful? Is it necessary? And is it coming from a place that means well? Or is it coming from a place of judgment? So, like I said, our mind is an amazingly powerful thing. So it can make, this is a great quote, the mind in itself is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. It's the whole thing when one man's trash is another man's treasure thing. It's about your perception, right? It's about how you see things. And when you challenge your beliefs, right, you're challenging your evaluations, you're challenging the things you knew were right. And then I have a small little video that I think is pretty awesome.
It's easy to put people in boxes. There's us, and there's them. The high earners, and those just getting by. Those we trust, and those we try to avoid. There's the new Danes, and those who've always been here. The people from the countryside, and those who've never seen a cow. The religious, and the self-confident. There are those we share something with, and those we don't share anything with.
Velkommen. Jeg kommer til at stille jer nogle spørgsmål i dag. Nogle af dem kan godt være lidt personlige, men jeg håber, I vil svare ærligt på dem. Hvem herinde i rummet var klassens klovn? Hvem er bonusforældre?
And then suddenly, there's us. We who believe in life after death. We who've seen UFOs. And all of us who love to dance. We who've been bullied. And we who've bullied others. And then there's us, the lucky ones who've had sex this past week. We who are broken-hearted. We who are madly in love. We who feel lonely. We who are bisexual, and we who acknowledge the courage of others. We who have found the meaning of life, and we who have saved lives. And then there's all of us who just love Denmark. So maybe there's more that brings us together than we think. TV2 Denmark. All that we share.
We are more alike than we think. We all want to belong. And by creating safe spaces, by being more vulnerable, we create situations where we can all belong. And it's not going to be easy. It takes constant practice to work on being non-judgmental, on being a better communicator, on being a better person. But I love this. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So a quick TLDL. Too long didn't listen. Listen to understand first, and only after you understand, try to be understood yourself. Work on empathy, vulnerability, and creating safe spaces. Have clear goals and definitions, and make sure everyone understands and accepts them. Keep it as simple and as clear as possible. Be mindful of your intention and your impact. And be open to criticism and understand that yes, you can and will be wrong. Try not to make assumptions about people and situations. You might not have all of the information or the whole picture, like with Clive and people that fired him. Act from a place of empathy, love, understanding, and forgiveness for yourself as well as others. If you don't know what you want, how do you expect to get it? Have you ever thought about your values and principles as a person? The things that guide you, your mission statement, what you're doing and why. And if you haven't, I highly suggest you start thinking about it. There's this thing called gratitude journaling. I do it, and it helps me a lot. Like every day, I start with thinking about 3 things I'm grateful for. If you start out the day with that, instead of like, oh, I have to get up, your day becomes a lot better. And I ask myself, who do I want to be today? I want to be more patient. I want to work better on my communicating, not speak too quickly on my presentation today, for example. So what guides you? What's important to you? What's your purpose? Because if you don't know what's important to you, everything is important to you. Think about the people that make a big deal about everything, that get angry when they're waiting in line or somebody takes a little bit too long. Or worse, the people where nothing's important to them. The people that are apathetic or indifferent, where nothing excites them. I want you to be the best you that you want to be, and I would love to help you. But if you don't know what that is yet, there's not much I can do. So the most important question you can ask is, who do you want to be? Who you are is defined by the values you are willing to struggle for. And if you don't know where you're going, where you want to go, how do you know where to go? So if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Everything's going to suck. Too long, I'm going to listen again. Work from a place of love, of empathy, of understanding. Be strict with yourself, but don't be hard on yourself. We all make mistakes. It's fine. Don't be hard on yourself or on others. Act from a place of empathy, love, understanding, and forgiveness. Forgive yourself and forgive others. Celebrate mistakes. Mistakes means we are learning, means we're growing, means we're trying things, means we're going outside of our comfort zone. Be accountable, take responsibility for your actions, but do it with kindness and understanding. What is your purpose? What is important to you? Is the fight I'm fighting my fight? Is it worth struggling for? And when you know your values and principles and what guides you, you'll see opportunities everywhere. But if you don't, you'll only see closed doors. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Be open, be willing, because if you are unwilling, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen. You won't grow. Challenge your beliefs and assumptions. When you are sure you're right, it's time to pause and reflect. Be mindful, be aware. Are you working towards your goals or who you want to be? Is what you're doing now helpful towards reaching those goals? If not, maybe you should be doing something else that helps you to that. Boundaries and courage. Don't set yourself on fire in order to keep others warm. Learn to say no. Learn to say yes, but also know when it's right and wrong. And you'll know that because you'll know what's happening right now is in accordance to your values and principles, and according to your ethics. Do your best, but also understand your best will differ from day to day. One day it could be awesome, and another day you'll need more effort just to get out of bed, and that's fine. When you learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, sorry. If you work hard on your job, you can make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune. Life is too short to be doing things that make you unhappy, to not know what you want, to not go for it. You owe it to yourself and to the ones you love and love you to invest in yourself and to work on yourself. And I love each and every one of you, and I'm willing to help you, but you're going to have to ask for help as well. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Any feedback? I'm always here. If I'm unavailable or unable to help at any moment, I will try to get you to somebody who can. So please feel free to come talk to me about anything. Thanks.